my CV, that was my business card, my introduction, was my biggest limitations. Because if you miss that keyword that unlocks the recruiter to look at your CV, then you won't get the job and you get the rejection letter automatically. So for me, when Mews shared with everyone the AI recruiter, and I had finally the chance to explain what those 3 lines in my CV meant, I was extremely happy, even if it was with an AI recruiter, but I knew there was a human on the other side, just understanding a bit more about myself, wanting to learn who's the woman behind like that application.
Welcome to Humans of Mews, part of the Future is Human podcast. I'm Ella McCann-Tomlin, and this is where we surface the human stories that often go untold at work. The turning points, the unconventional paths, the things that shape who we are beyond our job titles. These are the intimate conversations with people across Mews about their journeys told on their own terms. Welcome to the Future is Human. So my guests today are 2 people who graduated into arguably the worst job market for new entrants in over a decade, and both hopefully landed somewhere that they want to be. Alex Costa de Wit grew up in Barbados, studied business administration in Barcelona, and then graduated into a world where everyone around him was heading into finance or consulting, because I think that's what business school typically tells you to do. Nina Gualdi grew up in Italy, trained as a graphic designer, and then pivoted into communications and marketing, and has spent the better part of a year freelancing in Barcelona, finishing a master's, and also watching the market get progressively more brutal. So you both applied to Mews last August and started, I think, this March. And there were lots of rounds of interviews, an AI recruiter, a task that required you to build an agent. And so in this conversation, we're really going to get into what it actually feels like to enter the workforce right now, when the tools shaping the future of work are also making it harder in some ways. And we'll also talk about what rejection looks like to your sense of self, what your degree gives you when it doesn't always give you a job in the same industry, and what it means to land somewhere that you didn't necessarily expect to. So Alex and Nina, I'm really glad to have you here. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having us.
Very happy to be here.
I want to just start with the experience of looking for a role. So before Mews, before this program, what was both of your experiences of job hunting actually like? Because, you know, the headlines say it's brutal, but is that how it felt from the inside?
Nina, do you want to start? So you can go ahead if you want.
I 100% agree with the brutal word that we used for the title, because I truly believe that job hunting is the perfect name for it. I truly think you have to prove yourself even beyond what's actually really needed to get the job done. I feel like now everyone has a degree, everyone has additional things that make the CV looks amazing, and academic doesn't really shape who you are. So especially for entry level, it's really a challenge to find a company that has the ability to listen to you over your CV, over your academic accomplishment, and actually understand who you are, you know, excluding the actual just few words that are on a CV. So for sure, it's a brutal world to be in and to try to get into any kind of business, especially coming from our type of studies.
And Alex, how about you? You came from business school, which I think has a bit more of a defined path in what you're supposed to do after you graduate. What did it feel like to not do that? Because that's not the path you've taken by joining Mews. Was that a deliberate choice for you?
Yeah, so to be honest, yes, when you're in business school, a lot of them, especially, I don't know if it's just in Europe, but in general, they are pushing you to look into, I think, one of 2 paths. It's either consulting or finance, like you kind of mentioned before. But what's, I think, also interesting about business school is that because I think things are so broad, you also are not only encouraged, but you start looking into a bunch of other industries that you might have never considered in the past. So not only do you have these 2 very competitive trains that most people are following, so it's very competitive, the processes are very long, and there's a lot of people from different backgrounds going for them at the same time. But you're also looking at different job prospects in different industries that you might have never even heard of before, or you might have not even thought this is where they're actually recruiting or where I'm getting some sort of feedback or interest from. So going back as well to what you said before, yes, to me, it really was brutal because it was also me coming out of university, really having no real clear what would I like to do with my life or in terms of career, and I'm not very specialized in anything. So yes, I can look at a lot, but how much am I really looking into? How broad should I be going, or how specific should I be going? And really mitigating that really wasn't. It was interesting. It was a complex process for me.
And because, I had a different experience of this when I first entered the job market. I won't say how long ago, but a while ago. And that was, there was a different kind of, there wasn't AI, but there was a different, it was just post-financial crisis. And there was also some pressures around, entry-level positions requiring a kind of experience that you by definition don't have when you're entry level. And also the sense, to your point, Alex, that you kind of need to know what you want to do, or you need to have quite specific experience in what you want to do, even though you're at a stage in your career where you don't necessarily know what you want to do, and perhaps you want to experiment a little bit. How much does that resonate? And given that I remember feeling at that point in my career quite dejected by some of the rejections I got because I applied to so many jobs, partly because my sense of self in my career hadn't fully formed yet, and perhaps I wasn't as confident in my skill set yet. Does that resonate for either of you as well?
Okay, well, at least for me, it really does. I really like coming out of uni. Yes, you've have a degree behind you. There should be some sort of, trust in who you are, but you really haven't really experienced much. You haven't gotten too many opportunities to demonstrate what you know, even if it's not a lot. So I definitely have that feeling of yes, I'm presenting myself to this job, and this job, and all at the same time. And kind of managing that complexity, but also what I also experienced was, I want to say, a difficulty in what priorities am I putting first? Am I putting that I'd like to chase some sort of salary? Am I putting that I'd like to chase some sort of line of work? Or is it the development that they're promising me? Or is it the fact that I'll be promoted every year? There's so much to really, you realize coming out with very little experience and very little knowledge of what's going on, that you have so much you have to decide for now. And that, I think, is one of the real complexities and the difficulties that I experience, at least for myself. I don't know how you feel, Nina, but...
Yeah, for sure. Also because I feel like when you are younger, of course, you don't understand, but being, in the bubble of the academics, it's such a curated and safe bubble where you know where you're going to be next year. You know what you have to do. You have your schedule, you have your tasks. And you know what your identity is because you're studying a specific thing. So you see other classes with everyone's being, with different passions. But then you get into the job market and suddenly your degree is the same as, I don't know, many other millions of people. Especially for us, I think, being in the Barcelona environment, it's a highly international job market. So of course there are people from all over the world with all kind of languages, all kind of skills and different type of degrees coming, that it's very difficult to make yourself, being heard from big companies. It's always a challenge, but especially in this environment, it's probably a little bit more difficult.
Yeah, absolutely. And you both went through an AI recruiter as part of this experience. And what's interesting to me partly is that your experience of AI, I think, in the hiring process is probably different to some of your peers. You've mentioned before that some are environments where AI is treated certainly with caution or kept at a distance. Having been on the sort of receiving end of that, particularly in the hiring process, what do you make of that gap that you're experiencing between perhaps the Mews experience of interacting with AI and what you're hearing from some of the people around you?
Well, for me, which I know is a different experience from what Alex actually experienced, but for me it was a very positive experience because I really think that my CV, that was my business card, my introduction, was my biggest limitations. Because if you miss that keyword that unlocks, all the recruiter to look at your CV, then you won't get the job and you get the rejection letter automatically. So for me, when Mews just shared with everyone, the AI recruiter. And I had finally the chance to explain what those 3 lines in my CV meant. I was extremely happy, even if it was with an AI recruiter, but I knew there was a human on the other side, just understanding a bit more about myself, wanting to learn who's the woman behind like that application, So I had a very positive experience and I actually really liked it. But I know Alex actually had another point of view.
What's the counter to that, Alex?
I think I had looked at a lot of other jobs before, and I really did kind of appreciate that human element, at least when they put some sort of recruiter in front of you at first, and you really do have the chance to sell yourself. I do see where Nina's coming from, though, and it really was something not to, let's say, I looked at it as a negative. I more looked at it as like an interest point, that if already this company being Mews has the first stage as an AI recruiter, what must it look like on the inside? So rather than only focusing on, oh my gosh, it's an AI recruiter and they're going to basically boil me down to binary numbers and ones and zeros, and what does that mean? I really did actually choose to look at it as if this is what they have now, I wonder what the inside looks like. And now actually being inside, I'm very happy that I decided to continue with the process despite that. Because I do think that Mews, as one of the companies that I've really had the opportunity to look at from the inside, I've had a couple of other experiences in the past, is the one that seems to be the most willing to approach that AI first narrative, and being inside of that and learning and developing with everyone else at the same time is only going to be positive in the road ahead for whatever may shape my career, our careers will take. And very happy to be here.
Yeah, and it probably should be said as well, that was kind of an experimental approach. We're not wholesale using AI recruiters across the board. You probably caught us in a moment where we were trying that out. So I suppose it also does speak to Mews's experimental nature, perhaps, that we try these things, give them a go, see how they're landing. But I was, to be honest, Nina, I was surprised that you said that you enjoyed it, because I have my own skepticism about. But I love what you said about the fact that it almost enabled you to bring more of your humanness, which isn't something that people typically think of with interacting with AI in that way, or that interaction. Yeah.
It's also matched perfectly like with Mews as a company. Like Mews is a PMS, it just adds more and more technology to the product. But the whole goal is just to make humans being more humans and make the, technology do what it does best. So in the end, it was the perfect match. I just didn't know it yet, but it just matches perfectly like with the whole vision of the company.
Yeah, lovely. And just to go back to something that we spoke about a few minutes ago, you, Nina, have said something that I've been thinking about since we first spoke, that your first job really becomes the backbone of your whole career, and that kind of pressure on that first decision that kind of defines what trajectory you go onto. Alex spoke about the various kind of things to decide on, whether it's salary or culture or progression. I guess first to Nina, how much did that pressure weigh on you, and how did you ultimately come to the decision that you came to? What were the factors?
Of course, like I have friends and peers in my life, and I see them trying to get away from whatever environment their first job was like and trying to move into something completely different just because maybe they realized that they wanted something else for their life. And I see them struggling to get again into another environment. And I truly believe it's because, as I was saying, like people in the job hunting, like recruiters, don't really value the academic background as much as these arts experiences are. So really, like having a first job that matches a little bit, at least, like the career and the path that you have in mind. For me, it was highly important. Like for me, it was such a pressure, like choice to do. And I was also a bit picky when I was deciding which job to apply for, because I really wanted to make sure that I had the first job could pave the way of the road that I was imagining for myself. So for me, it was actually highly important to just match whatever interest that I had and to ensure that I had like my career ready to go. And in this case, I was always looking for a graduate program because I love the possibility to also develop horizontally, not only vertically in a company, but having the opportunity the unique opportunity to find out how other departments are, how they work, if I maybe fit perfectly in another department that I would have never imagined in my life. So that was really a big point for me, for sure.
Yeah. The ability to go through different departments and kind of experiment a little bit, even within your choice. Alex, same question, but I suppose you have this business school gravitational pull towards certain types of roles. How much did it feel like a risk to join a company like Mews that isn't necessarily on that kind of list?
So I think for me, when they're pushing you on these two trains that we mentioned before, I think, and for me, I was kind of trying to see if the consulting train would kind of work to my benefit, and this is something I actually really wanted to do. But after a couple of really looking into it, I really decided to take a step back and think, what is the real reason that this industry is attracting me? And it was more of solving different kinds of complex problems. And then you think, or you keep pushing back, or you keep reflecting on that. And I realized that for me, I think one of the, if not the biggest factor in looking for a job was more the skills development that the job was promising me. So rather, it wasn't so much the what am I going to be doing, it's what am I going to be learning from the process. And that's exactly when I landed on the Mews job description for the program. So much of it was on our learning and our development and what we were going to be able to say we had done in 2 years, that it was just something I couldn't shake, or I really couldn't look away from. Yes, it was hospitality, and I don't come from hospitality. I don't have any prior or previous experience with hospitality, but the fact that I would not only be learning about one of the industries, which at the end of the day I do know something about, but the learning and the capabilities that I'll be able to say I have built or will have learned or have practiced from this was the thing that really decided. I finally hopped off the other train and I jumped on this one.
I mean, it makes sense. I've career-wise been on, what I think people would call a squiggly career journey. My degree was in history. I then joined a tech company. I was in a commercial role. I'm now not in a commercial career path. So, I can attest to the fact that even though this particular moment, I think, is a particular moment in the job market and in the graduate job market particularly, that landing somewhere like Mews, obviously Mews wasn't my first role, does give you that opportunity to stretch your skill set and move. Roles will open up tomorrow that didn't exist yesterday, and you'll be able to move horizontally and across department and that kind of thing. I think I don't know whether or not this is still 100% the case, but it certainly has historically been the case. I think that tech in particular gives you that breadth of ability to move, especially in environments where you're growing at such a fast rate, right? Because the nature of the roles changes from month to month and week to week. But I think one of the things I was reading recently was that analytical thinking is now the most valued skill for employers, which for both of you feels like something you probably learned in your degrees, regardless of the fact that you did quite different degree subjects.
Exactly. Completely agree.
Yeah.
And neither of you came from hospitality, as you just mentioned, Alex. And it may not have been the answer that you gave people when you talked about what you wanted to do. You've talked a little bit about this, but I'd love to hear more about what specifically really drew you to Mews. And do you think you'd have found your way into this space, into the hospitality space, if not for the GenMews program specifically?
Well, at least to answer that last question first, would I have landed in hospitality without Mews? I'd probably say no. I think I was definitely looking at other tech companies at the same time that were offering something very similar. But again, I think for me, what I would be able to take away from this experience, and also the priority that I think Mews is giving us in our development, was really what spoke out to me the most. Yes, then when beginning that interview process and I was meeting different people after that AI recruiter, all of them were they were incredibly in sync with how much they were not boasting, but how much they were in belief of what Mews has had to offer its employees. And it was something that was quite addicting. I mean, there were 7 different rounds, and in those different rounds of meeting different people, it seemed like all of them seemed to join in on and on about what Mews could do for someone so young, just coming out of university. And I really wanted it. This is where I am now. So very happy, but I don't think I would have ended up in hospitality without it. I think it was definitely the way that Mews is trying to, I think, individualize itself within the industry and what it's trying to promise people. Definitely spoke out to me the most and really spoke for itself after.
Yeah, 100% agree with Alex. I think we really had our door open thanks to this program, because actually even tech companies like Mews, for example, it's really hard to get an entry level job. And I feel especially as Alex said, it's really about what the program gives to us, if it adds value to us, to our CV, to our experience, and how can we just get the best out of it. And I think that Mews literally was the best program that I saw out there, and I was I need to get it. So I was all in during this long process. So I really think that was a topic for sure, but also it was actually a fear of mine. We spoke about it on our really first day at Mews with our director, Irene, and we spoke about our fears. And I actually said that I am not, part of the hospitality industry. I've never had anything to do with it. And she kind of opened my eyes saying, Nina, you do have experience in hospitality just as a guest. And I'm you're actually right. I think I've been to quite some hotels, have my spare of experience, but just from the ultimate client, which is the guest. So it really opened my mind, and it also engaged this industry with a bit of a light heart that I could actually face it and be successful in it. So
yes, it's an interesting framing that, because I've worked in tech environments where you haven't got necessarily that end user experience inherently, and you don't. And also I feel hospitality is an area that most people have an opinion on, right? Most people know what they like, what they look for, what great looks like, what kind of service they're after. Some people care more than others, but pretty much everyone has stayed in hotels and has an opinion on what a great experience looks like. So you kind of always have that ability to come in and with that lens. You talked a little bit about that as a fear. I'm interested in any of your other sort of nervousness joining Mews. I mean, obviously it was a long process, so you had time to be really thoughtful about it. But is there anything that has surprised you? Are there any fears that you had that you've now, looking back, realized were not something to worry about? How's it landed versus how you expected it to be?
Well, I think for me, something that they kept repeating in the interview process was things at Mews change a lot, and they change quickly. So not that this was a fear, because when I'm in the company, obviously I'll be part of that change, and maybe that will work. But we did get accepted around October, and we were to start in March. And a small part of me was if there's a change in these 5 months that is instrumentally changing the way the whole fundamental business is running, not only would I probably not know about it, but I'll be dropped in with some sort of expectation, and maybe it'll be completely different. So at the back of my mind before we started, this was something that I was thinking about every now and then, maybe would keep me up every now and then. And even when we ended up joining, we were told we would be starting in our chosen departments with maybe with our chosen director in mind. And we both now have actually different directors, because something did change in those 5 months. And then in March actually created something different. I think the other thing that I was more fearful about was exactly how much, let's say, AI proficiency every position and every person, or what the business was really expecting of us, especially being so young. But I think we really did catch Mews at a perfect time, where I think the company is really focusing on making sure that everyone's proficiency is moving at the same pace and all together. So not only do I don't feel left behind, but I don't feel like I don't think it really should have been something to think about before starting, because I really do think that we have any kind of tool, any kind of learning we could possibly need in order to catch up, if that's even what we needed to do at the time. So any fears that I did have, all fine, all good now. But it was definitely those two things that in my mind kept me on my toes in my first couple of weeks.
I remember that I would, every people I would meet, I would be like, so an advice for me? So I would always ask for everyone's advice. And I still remember to this day, the best advice ever. That's like, accept the chaos, because there's going to be a lot and it's a rush of information coming in. And it's truly like, you cannot know anything, and anything and nothing at the same time. So like, I remember when I started it, I would ask basically everyone that I met for an advice. And advices for me were really the key to get everything started, with an idea of what to expect. And I still remember the best advice that I've ever had up to this day, because basically I was warned that I'm never going to know everything about Mews because things change so much and so fast that I'm never going to keep up with everything. And for me, it was so strange because coming from the academic world, you're requested to know everything. So I remember the first days even that I was trying to put everything in a Confluence page, put everything down, understanding how everything works. And I learned very fast that I truly don't know everything, and it's good. And I have to do my best and run through it. As for the AI, I actually jumped into the trend pretty quickly. I started building straight away. I'm now between the AI champions of my department. So I really tried to get in as fast as possible, to the trend and to whatever was requested from the company. And honestly, it's been one of the best tools that I could, start using. I think it's going to be the future of our company and all companies. So I'm really happy that I managed to jump in.
I know how you feel about, even though I've joined in a completely different role to both of you, and I joined Mews just over 2 years ago, I had an experience where I'd worked at a tech company for a really long time, for a decade, which is an insanely long time to work at a tech company. And I joined when there were there was the two co-founders and one other person. So I was kind of employee number 2. And then I left. It was about 500 people when I left. And so as people had joined, I'd met them and I'd sort of accumulated a knowledge of the landscape of that business really well, even as it had gotten quite big. Whereas I joined Mews and I think we were over 1,000 people for sure. And so I also, Nina, had that like desire to know everything and to be able to see the landscape. And I sort of was used to knowing everyone and what they did and how long they'd been here and who I could speak to about this kind of thing. And obviously you do build up some of that organic knowledge over time and you figure out who your allies are and all of that kind of stuff. But that getting used to the sensation of like, I'm not going to know every facet has also been a journey for me in a different kind of way. So yeah, I feel your pain on that one. One thing that I think is linked to that is the fact that Mews is a remote first company. And that also makes it, I think, a little bit harder to know when you can't physically see everyone. Alex, you were quite candid in the call that we had before this on the fact that in a distributed company, you can miss some of the sort of peer-to-peer learning and it's not as organic, perhaps. How significant has that been for your experience of joining Mews?
I definitely think that if I maybe was to say one of the things I probably might change might be this. When I think of like the work I'm doing and being in Mews, I think that learning from others and learning by doing together is still something that's very important. It's one of the ways that I think I learned the most, especially before, whether it was in other jobs or within in classes or university. Learning from each other is important. And I have people in my team that are in Ireland. I have no idea what they're doing on a day-to-day basis. Can I ask and can I organize meetings with them to get that information? Yes. But at the same time, I feel like sometimes I do miss that. I'm very happy to be in Barcelona because we do have an office here, which means that I can go and I can see what challenges, what goals, what objectives other people and other teams are having. And I do think that within my own department, I'm kind of okay, and I know kind of a good sense of what's going on. But someone in R&D or someone in product development, I could lightly guess at the dark space that would be their day-to-day process. But something that Mews does do, which I'm very happy about, is they do organize offsites pretty regularly, it seems like. Maybe like for at least in my experience, I've only been here 3 months, and I've already been a part of one in Dallas with all of the customer experience and delivery department. And it was the first time that my entire team was in one room, at least for me. And seeing them for those 2 or 3 hours that we were doing a case all together, I learned so much from the way that others were facing different problems, how they would approach problem solving altogether. So, and seeing which people actually knew a lot because they had been here for a very long time or were very proficient in other areas. So I'm at least I'm happy about the fact that this is not forgotten, and we do have some sort of peer-to-peer contact in person pretty okay regularly. But I do think that on a more day-to-day basis, this is something that I'm still kind of struggling with. And it really does have to come from me to chase those connections, which is fine. And that's kind of what we were warned about before joining. But it's not as easy as if we were all together in the same place. I mean, you, Ella, and the two of us have never all met in person, and we could be doing this in person, for example, and it might be a little different. So recognizing that is also something I think that is fair, you know?
Yeah, there are trade-offs for sure. Nina, what's your experience been like of that remote first environment?
For me, I truly believe that the first department really shaped how I see these like work day-to-day activities. Like in my case, I have more calls than Alex. I know, like I think as nature, like marketing has a lot of different departments that work together at the same time. So we have multiple calls to just catch up and understand how we are. And for me, it's just easier to just be on remote, just be here, connect whenever we need. And also everyone is very much fast on Slack and everything. So I don't feel like the need of the peer-to-peer, but the remote work really makes me crave, some human interaction and having the possibility to meet my teammates. Like I truly now, it's been 3 months. Tomorrow I'm going to my first offsite, and I'm finally going to be meeting some of my marketing peers because there's no one in the Barcelona office from marketing. And finally, I'm going to just meet some people in real life that I apparently know every day for the last 3 months. So that's exciting. As long as I'm comfortable and I like working on remote, it makes me value even more like meeting people in real life. And I love that Mews keeps that as like a must. We have to have interactions, like human interactions in real life. So that's something that I value a lot.
Yeah, it's that conscious getting together around something rather than it just being a sort of organic. Although I totally take your point, Alex, that, you can't physically tap someone on the shoulder. There is a trade-off there for sure in not being just next to people. And as you say, Nina, you can go into the boss loader office, but there's no one in your team there. So these are some of the things that I think we grapple with in the environment that we have. But it also means that we can hire people in lots of different places, as you say. I think it's interesting to think about this from the perspective of you at this point in your career as well. When I came into the job market, remote working wasn't a thing, even though I worked at a tech company. So technically it could have been, it just wasn't the norm, right? So those early years of my career, I was in the office with a lot of people who were my age, going out for drinks on a Thursday, all of those kinds of things that bond you to your peers. And by the time COVID happened, I was ready to be at home. So it kind of worked out quite well for me. I was like, my 20s are over. It's fine. I just had my 30th birthday and I was like, I can work from home. That's fine. So I think this kind of like different moments in your career and life also kind of shape how you respond to that peer-to-peer learning and what you need from it. I know we don't have a huge amount of time left, but I'd love to ask you kind of final-ish question. You're right at the start of your career journeys in many ways, and certainly your Mews journey, and you've still got fresh eyes. I'd love to know, what do you really feel good about in this moment? Like, not necessarily advice or lessons learned yet, but what's working, what feels right? What are you looking forward to in the next steps of your career? I think that'd be a good sort of place to end.
What I feel really good about, to be honest, I'm very happy that we have this rotational program and the length of each rotation being 8 months. I really do. I enjoy getting up every day and knowing that I'm going to be some sort of impact in 8 months, and then I'm going to make a shift and I'm going to I can go into a completely different department that might have nothing to do with the one I was just doing and develop skills in another that have nothing to do with the ones I've just developed. So I think in 2 years' time, I think I'm going to have the most, I think, rounded off experience from a first position that I don't think I know anyone else in my age group, of my friends, of my peers, of whoever, that probably has that kind of diversity from one experience and in such a short amount of time that I will have had. So I'm very happy and I'm very excited to also make this to take advantage of this as much as possible. I think we also, again, Mews really is prioritizing us and really is focusing on us. So not only are we making impact within our departments and within our teams, but we're also allowed, or we're encouraged to speak with people that are very high up. We're supposed to have conversations with the CEO. We're supposed to see different vice presidents and different presidents of different departments and really engage and speak to them of what we can continue contributing for Mews. So that for me is the most exciting thing. And the fact that 3 months have already kind of blown by. I can't believe it, but I'm very happy that I still have a year and 9 months to really just see as much as possible.
I completely agree with Alex, like 100%. So to say something different, if I were to speak to the Nina of last year in June that just graduated, first of all, I would say congratulations that you graduated, you finished your studies. Good job. Because I don't think, looking back, I appreciated it enough because I went straight into job hunting. So really appreciate what you have done. And for the job hunting process, don't lower your standards too much for a company that's not willing to listen to you and understand who you are behind your CV. And be sure of what you learned in your academic, show whatever experience you've done and what you learned, but also be very open to just keep learning and just show curiosity, jump in things, be proactive, even during the process of applying. It really shows a difference between like other candidates that may just be in a comfort zone. So just be curious. That's the best advice I could give.
Wonderful. And I have to end by saying that I'm quite sad that neither of you are doing a rotation with me because I have very much enjoyed all the conversations that we've had and you sound like you're an asset to your department. So thank you so much. It was really a pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you very much, Ella. Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us.
No problem. The Future is Human is brought to you by Mews. If you want to learn more about what we do, visit mews.com. And if this conversation resonated, you can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you listen. Hit subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. Thanks for listening.